Every day across America, thousands of dogs wait behind metal bars, eyes filled with confusion and hope. They don't understand why they're there or when they'll leave. But sometimes, fate has a way of bringing the right souls together at exactly the right moment. This is the story of Max, a chocolate Labrador whose journey from abandonment to love would change not only his life, but the lives of everyone he touched. The rain fell heavily on that cold November morning. The animal shelter staff arrived to find a soaked cardboard box by the entrance. Inside, curled up and shivering, was a chocolate Labrador, approximately 3 years old. No note, no explanation, just a frightened dog whose trust in humans had been shattered overnight. The shelter workers named him Max, carefully dried him off and led him to a kennel that would become his temporary home. The veterinarian's examination revealed a malnourished but otherwise healthy dog. His ribs showed through his dull coat, and his eyes carried a wariness that broke the hearts of everyone who met him. In those first days, Max would retreat to the back of his kennel whenever someone approached. He ate little, slept fitfully, and seemed to have surrendered to his circumstances. The shelter was overcrowded, and chocolate labs weren't as quickly adopted as their yellow or black counterparts. The staff worried that Max's time might be limited if he didn't start showing better to potential adopters. But fate had other plans for Max, and those plans began with a woman named Sarah. Sarah Morgan had never planned on adopting a dog. At 34, she lived alone in a small apartment and worked long hours as a physical therapist. Her life was structured, predictable, and, though she rarely admitted it, increasingly lonely. 6 months earlier, Sarah had lost her father to cancer. They had been exceptionally close, and his absence left a void she couldn't seem to fill. Her father had always had Labradors throughout her childhood, loyal companions who had been as much a part of her upbringing as family traditions and holiday gatherings. On the anniversary of her father's passing, Sarah found herself driving aimlessly, trying to escape the silence of her apartment. Without consciously deciding to, she found herself pulling into the parking lot of the local animal shelter. "I'm just looking," she told herself as she walked through the doors. "Just to see." The cacophony of barking hit her immediately. Rows of kennels lined the walls, each containing a dog, hoping today would be the day someone chose them. Sarah walked slowly, stopping occasionally to read the information cards attached to each kennel. And then she saw him, a chocolate Labrador, sitting quietly in the back corner of his space, watching her with eyes that seemed to understand loss in a way few could. "That's Max," the shelter volunteer explained, noticing Sarah's interest. "He's been with us for 3 weeks now, found abandoned in the rain. He's still pretty withdrawn, doesn't really engage with visitors." "May I meet him?" Sarah asked, surprising herself. The volunteer looked hesitant. "Of course, but just so you know, he hasn't warmed up to anyone yet. Don't take it personally." They led Sarah to a small meeting room and brought Max in. As the volunteer had warned, Max immediately retreated to the furthest corner, watching Sarah with cautious eyes. Sarah didn't approach him. Instead, she simply sat on the floor, pulled out her phone, and began scrolling through photos. "This was my dad's last dog," she said softly, turning the screen toward Max, even though he was across the room. "His name was Cooper. He was a chocolate lab, too." Max's ears perked up slightly at the sound of her gentle voice. "Dad used to say Labradors have souls that understand human suffering, that they know exactly when to offer comfort and when to give space." Sarah continued talking, sharing memories of her father and his dogs, not looking directly at Max, but simply filling the silence with stories. After about 10 minutes, she noticed movement from the corner of her eye. Max had inched closer, still maintaining a safe distance, but clearly listening. When their 40-minute session ended, Sarah stood up slowly. "I'll come back tomorrow, Max," she promised. And for the first time, his tail offered the slightest wag. True to her word, Sarah returned the next day and the day after that. Each time she would sit in the meeting room, sometimes reading aloud from a book, sometimes just talking about her day. Each time, Max would inch a little closer. On her fifth visit, something remarkable happened. As Sarah sat cross-legged on the floor, describing her challenging day at work, Max crossed the room and lay down beside her, not touching, but close enough that she could feel the warmth of his body. The shelter staff couldn't believe it, the volunteer told her. He hasn't done that with anyone else. By the seventh visit, Max had placed his head in Sarah's lap, his eyes closed in an expression of tentative trust. When she gently stroked his head, she felt him exhale deeply, as if releasing a breath he had been holding for weeks. "I think he's choosing you," the volunteer said, watching them together. "Would you consider adopting him?" Sarah had come to the shelter seeking nothing but a momentary escape from her grief. Now she found herself filling out adoption paperwork, her heart racing with a mixture of excitement and fear. Was she ready for this responsibility? Could her small apartment accommodate a Labrador? What would happen when she returned to her long work hours? But looking at Max, who now stood beside her with the first true signs of hope in his eyes, Sarah knew some decisions transcend practical considerations. The first night in Sarah's apartment was challenging for both of them. Max paced nervously, sniffing every corner and jumping at unfamiliar sounds. Sarah had prepared everything: a plush dog bed, quality food, toys and treats, but Max seemed overwhelmed by his new surroundings. When bedtime came, Sarah showed him his bed in the living room, but as soon as she closed her bedroom door, Max began to whimper. His cries grew increasingly desperate until Sarah opened the door. "Just for tonight," she whispered, as Max cautiously entered her room and settled on the floor beside her bed. Days passed, and gradually a routine developed. Morning walks before work, a dog walker at midday, and long evening walks through the neighborhood park. Max began to show small signs of personality: a preference for the blue ball over the red one, excitement when Sarah pulled out his leash, and a peculiar habit of bringing her shoes to her when she returned home. But challenges remained. Max would panic if Sarah moved too quickly or raised her voice during phone calls. Thunderstorms would send him hiding under furniture, trembling uncontrollably, and sometimes he would still wake in the night, whimpering from dreams that Sarah could not see. Recovery, Sarah realized, was not linear. It was a process of 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Max's emotional wounds were healing, but scars remained. 3 months after the adoption, Sarah faced a difficult anniversary, her father's birthday. She had taken the day off work, planning to visit his grave with flowers. That morning, she sat on her couch, tears falling silently as she held one of her father's old sweaters. Max, who had been watching from his bed, approached carefully. He placed his paw on her knee, then his head, his eyes fixed on hers with an intensity that took her breath away. When Sarah continued to cry, Max moved closer, pressing his body against hers in a gesture so deliberate it could only be interpreted as comfort. "You understand, don't you?" Sarah whispered, wrapping her arms around his neck. Later that day, when Sarah prepared to leave for the cemetery, Max became agitated at the sight of her coat and keys. On impulse, she attached his leash. "Do you want to come with me to meet Dad?" At the cemetery, Max walked solemnly beside Sarah, matching her pace, as if sensing the significance of their journey. At her father's grave, he sat quietly while she arranged flowers and spoke softly to the headstone. As they walked back to the car, Sarah realized something profound had shifted between them. Max had become more than a rescue project or a connection to her past. He had become her partner in healing, in a way that felt almost supernatural in its timing and perfection. Life with Max continued to evolve in beautiful and unexpected ways. His confidence grew steadily, and with it came a playfulness that Sarah hadn't seen before, racing in circles at the dog park, playing fetch with boundless energy, even attempting to befriend the suspicious cat that lived next door. Sarah's apartment, once a quiet shrine to her solitude, now echoed with the clicking of dog nails on hardwood and the occasional joyful bark. She rearranged furniture to create more space for play, hung photos of Max alongside family pictures, and found herself purchasing dog toys instead of the books and candles that had previously been her only indulgence. More significantly, Sarah's social world expanded. Morning walks led to conversations with other dog owners. She joined a weekend hiking group for lab owners, where Max's growing confidence made him a favorite among the other dogs. Sarah even started volunteering at the shelter where she had found Max, helping other withdrawn dogs connect with potential adopters. Sometimes, she told a fellow volunteer, the animals we rescue end up rescuing us instead. 6 months after the adoption, Sarah received a promotion at work that allowed her more flexibility with her schedule. She used the opportunity to enroll Max in therapy dog training, recognizing in him the same gentle empathy that her father had always attributed to Labradors. 1 year after bringing Max home, Sarah received a call from the shelter. They were organizing a special event, bringing therapy dogs to visit children in the oncology ward of the local hospital. Given Max's remarkable transformation and his recent therapy dog certification, would they be interested in participating? Sarah hesitated. The oncology ward, where her father had spent his final weeks. The memories were still painful, but something told her this was important. On the day of the visit, Max walked into the hospital wearing his therapy dog vest, head held high with a confidence that brought tears to Sarah's eyes when she remembered the frightened dog she had first met. Throughout the afternoon, Max moved from room to room, offering his head for petting, performing simple tricks to elicit smiles, and sometimes just lying quietly beside beds where children rested. The nurses marveled at his intuition, how he seemed to know which children needed energetic play and which needed gentle presence. In the final room they visited, a young girl sat with her father, both looking exhausted from treatments and worry. The girl's face lit up at the sight of Max, while her father watched with grateful tears as his daughter laughed for what the nurses later said was the first time in weeks. As they prepared to leave, the father approached Sarah. "Your dog," he said quietly, "just gave my daughter her best day in months. I don't know how to thank you." Sarah looked at Max, who was receiving a final hug from the girl. "He knows what it's like to need a second chance," she replied. "We both do." Today, Max continues his work as a therapy dog, bringing comfort to hospital patients, elderly residents in nursing homes, and anxious children learning to read. His story, from abandoned and withdrawn to confident and compassionate, has inspired dozens of adoptions from the shelter where Sarah found him. Sarah often reflects on the strange sequence of events that brought them together, her grief, her aimless drive, her impulsive shelter visit. Some might call it coincidence, others might call it destiny. But watching Max now, confidently navigating the world with trust and joy, Sarah prefers to think of it as a reminder that healing is always possible, that broken hearts can find wholeness again, and that sometimes the souls who understand us best are the ones who have known similar pain. For Max and Sarah, their journey from lost to love wasn't just about a woman adopting a dog. It was about two wounded souls recognizing each other and choosing to heal together. This has been The Animal Soul. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If you were touched by Max's story, please consider supporting your local animal shelter or exploring the possibility of giving a rescue animal their forever home. Every animal deserves a second chance, and sometimes we discover that we needed them as much as they needed us.